everyone, my name is Mikel Graham and I'm coming to you from Heli Direct, and today we're going to be talking about how to get the feel that is just right for you across all of your helicopters. Now, there are many different fiberless systems, different helicopters, blades, servos, all of these things contribute to the feel of the helicopter. We're not going to be talking about that in this video. It's just too many variations and just too many variables to figure out how to tune to get your exact feel. But what we are going to talk about are the things you can do across the board to get your helicopters to feel the way that it's just right for you. So before we get started, let's talk about what the feel of a helicopter actually means. So the feel of a helicopter is actually made up of two primary components. The first component is the transmitter. This is actually the only sense of touch you have, and thus the sense of feel that you have when you're flying your RC helicopter. How the transmitter fits in your hands, how the sticks feel, how long they are, tension, all of that contributes to the overall feel of the helicopter. The second component is your perception of the helicopter in response to your inputs. So for example, when you give a small input on the transmitter, you expect a corresponding small response from the helicopter. If you give a large input from the transmitter, you expect a large response from the helicopter. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started and talk about the first component, which of course is the transmitter. How the transmitter fits in your hand is the first sense of connectedness that you have with the helicopter. If you're holding a transmitter that does not quite fit your hands well, it just doesn't feel comfortable, flying the helicopter is not going to feel comfortable. So if you're in the market for a new transmitter, try to get your hands on the transmitters that you're considering and see how it fits in your hands before making a decision. There are a lot of transmitters out there that are great transmitters that just might not be the fit for a specific person. Me specifically, I hold my transmitter in a very specific way, and there are certain transmitters that I just can't hold in that way. Thus, unfortunately, those transmitters are just not for me. Let me show you what I mean here. So I fly the IX-20, and this is a large transmitter, but I really like it because I have large hands and it fits my hands very well. Now, I'm a pincher, so I like to hold my sticks like this. It's a combination of pinching and thumbs. And because of that, I like to stick my middle finger between these two switches. Now, there are some transmitters where these two switches are too close together and I can't put my finger in between, which makes the whole transmitter uncomfortable for me. So depending on how you hold your transmitter, whether you're a thumber, pincher, or some combination like me, and of course how your hand is going to determine whether or not a transmitter is comfortable when you're holding it. This is going to play a big role in how connected you feel to your helicopter. The other adjustment that you can make is stick tension. Different manufacturers have different gimbals, different tensions, and they all can be adjusted. Now, there are pros and cons to having looser or tighter stick tensions, and you should take the time to figure out what's right for you. If you run a lower tension, then when you're doing pirouetting maneuvers, for example, it'll make the flip look much more smooth. However, when you're doing really fast maneuvers such as TikToks, you're more likely to introduce some unintended movement. The flip side of that, if you have the tension very high, it makes those maneuvers such as TikToks much easier to do without giving those unintended interactions. But depending on your helicopter, that notchiness when going around may cause the disc of the helicopter to notch as well. So take the time to find a tension that is right for you and right for your flying style. And don't be afraid to have different tension for elevator and aileron. You know, our hands are not symmetric. And so it's easier to pull versus to push. Same thing going forward and back. Depending on your hand, some directions may be easier to move than others. So it's okay to have more tension in elevator than less tension in aileron. It's up to you. At the end of the day, it's your transmitter adjusted to get the feel that you want. Now, I talked about the tension over here, but also let's talk about the tension over here on throttle. Now, I like to run loose throttle if it shows. It doesn't want to show here, but I like to run really loose throttle stick. I did not come up with this. This was first done, I believe, by Nick Maxwell, and I tried it and I absolutely love it. A lot of transmitters have the throttle stick a little too stiff for my liking, and it makes finding that hover point a little hard because the stick literally sticks. So just like your tension over here, you can adjust the stiffness of the collective throttle stick on the left side as well. So this is a little dangerous because if you not careful, it can move around unintended, so never take your fingers off of this. But take the time to find the settings that is right for you and your style. So that was the first part, talking about the physical aspects of your transmitter. Of course, make the adjustments, find what works and feels right for you. Now, let's move on to the second part, which is the perception of your helicopter. And to do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about my personal helicopters. So let's get started. So here I have my 4 main electric helicopters. We have the SAB Kraken S Kyle Stacy Edition, the SAB Raw Kyle Stacy Edition, the XL Power World Champion Kenny Coe Edition, and the Fusion 550. These are my favorite machines, and they all fly distinctly different from one another. Now, I want to first talk about the Fusion 550 and the XL Power World Champion Edition. With these 2 helicopters, I feel very comfortable doing hurricanes low to the ground, and I feel completely in control all the time. Awesome machines. However, trying those same maneuvers on my 3-blade machines was a little difficult. If you know anything about 3 blades, they are a bit more extreme. The cyclic is faster, collective is faster. They're just, imagine everything is just turned up and everything's more sensitive. And because of that, I just never felt comfortable doing those hurricanes low to the ground. I never felt that connected to the machine. And the reason being is because, as I mentioned, everything's faster, so it makes everything much more sensitive. Now, I'm the type that I did not want to turn down the overall rates of my cyclic, because for me, I got the 3 blades for the high cyclic, and if I turn my cyclic rates down, it kind of defeats the purpose. So what I did in my transmitter is that I actually started adding Expo. Expo on the cyclic elevator and aileron made the hurricanes much more manageable while still maintaining the overall extreme performance of having 3 blades. Now, for a long time, I was really against having Expo. I really don't have a good reason for it, because at the end of the day, it's your helicopter. Set it up the way you want it and gives you the feel that you want. No one's going to come over to you and be like, hey, that was a great flight, but are you running any Expo? Like, no one's going to do that. Adjust the helicopter to get the feel that you like. Adding a little Expo to these 3-blade machines made them a lot more manageable and a lot more fun to fly. Now I want to talk a little bit about my 3-blade helicopters. A while back, a friend of mine was taking videos and pictures and asked me to do some point rolls with my Raw Kyle Stacy Edition right on the deck. Now, I've done this maneuver several times, but didn't really have much experience doing it with my 3-blade Raw. And when I tried to do it, no matter what I did, I could not really lock in with the helicopter. When you do this maneuver, there's a quick pop of the collective to bring the helicopter up when you turn 90 degrees, and then you roll back down to keep it stationary. Now, with my 2 blades, I could do this no problem, but on my Raw, whenever I tried to do it and I gave that little pop of collective, it would climb 5 or 10 feet. No matter how soft of a pop I gave it, it always seemed to climb. And so because of that, I just never really felt comfortable with it, never locked in, and it just seemed like it was just beyond my capabilities with this helicopter. And again, the reason is because 3-blade is just more extreme all around. But instead of trying to force myself to get used to it, I came into the collective and I flattened out the center of the collective curve. Not much, just a little bit, just added a little bit of expo, or rather lowered the 25% point and the 75% point, and it had expo smooth it out so that the helicopter was a little less sensitive around center. That small adjustment allowed me to do that maneuver without the helicopter getting too far away from me when I gave that collective input. So now I still have the extreme performance at maximum collective, but at the same time, it's much more manageable around center when I'm doing those stationary maneuvers. Now, it's true, a lot of the things I showed you, the expo, dual rates, collective, pitch curve, all of that can be adjusted in the flybarless system. Personally, though, I prefer to adjust these things on the transmitter and keep everything in the flybarless system as linear as possible. You may have noticed that on my expo page that I had a dual rate of 70%. The reason being is because that flight mode in the flybarless system has a very, very high cyclic rate. And if I want, I can get that full cyclic rate with a flip of the switch without changing my flight mode and thus without changing my gains, but now I get the full cyclic rate. So within the flybarless system, it's the same flight mode, but now on the transmitter, I'm getting full cyclic rate because I'm using dual rates. And so for me, I like to have these parameters separate from the flybarless system so I can separate them from the flight mode. Now again, this is all personal preference. The whole point of this entire video is to encourage you to take the time to get the feel and setup that is right for you and your machines. Because like I said, you can put down an amazing flight. No one's going to come up to you and be like, oh, did you have expo? Oh, well, I guess the flight was okay. It's not going to happen. So set your helicopter up, set your transmitter up in a way that you like it. So with that said, happy flying, be safe, and thanks for watching.